In this video lesson, we are going to review the ordering symbols, is greater than and is less than. I think most of you who are watching this video are probably familiar with these symbols, although they can be a little bit confusing, so that's why I want to have this review. Before we speak more about those symbols, I want to talk about a general idea first, and that is that there are different ways of saying the same thing in life and in math. So for instance, if I say, please come over for dinner, and come over for dinner, please, those are two different statements that mean the same thing. I've just reordered the words a little bit. Different ways of saying the same thing. And then now here's an example in math. Using the division box for division, we can read this problem from left to right, or we can read it from right to left. Although it's more conventional, more common to read it from left to right, as when saying the 2 first, 2 divided into 10, but there wouldn't be anything wrong with saying the 10 first, but you'd have to change the wording a little bit. You'd have to say 10 divided by 2. And we've talked about this in a previous lesson, so I'm just calling your attention to it. This is an example of being able to read something in math from left to right or right to left, but the wording changes a bit. So that's what happens when we use the greater than and less than symbols. When we make a statement using these symbols, we can read those statements either from left to right or right to left. Well, let's get this going. Let's compare the numbers 2 and 8. So a review of how these symbols work. We're going to put one of the numbers here, one of the numbers here. And the number that we put here, since it's next to the wide side of the symbol, that's going to be the larger number. The number that we put over here, since it's next to the little pointy end, the small end of the symbol, that's going to be the smaller number. Same thing down here. The number that goes here is going to be next to the little pointy end, so that's going to be the smaller number. And the number that's over here, which is next to the wide end of the symbol, is going to be the larger number. Okay, so let's fill in with our 2's and our 8 up here. Now, the number that goes here is next to the wide side, so this needs to be the bigger number, which of course is the 8. And then the 2 is over here next to the little pointy end. Now we can set up these two numbers with the other symbol, but down here, the number that we put here is next to the little pointy end, so that needs to be the smaller number, which in this case is the 2. And on this side, the larger number, because it's next to the wide end of the symbol. So we need to put the 8 over here. Okay, so reading from left to right, we would read 8 is greater than 2, and reading this statement from left to right, we would read 2 is less than 8. Now I want to pause and talk a little bit more about reading these statements, because we can read them two different directions, from right to left or left to right. Now, whatever number is here, if you're reading from left to right, if you get confused about how to read this symbol, you can use your finger. And so put your finger on the number that you say first, and then drag your finger from left to right, and pay attention to what you come to first on the symbol. On the symbol, you come to the wide end first, so you're going to say is greater than. And then you would say the second number. Now, if we're reading this statement from right to left, you would say this number first, and using your finger, you could point to it, and then drag your finger, move it to the left, and what do you hit first on this symbol, the little pointy end? So you would say is less than, and then this number. So putting back in my 8 and my 2, you could read this as 8 is greater than 2, or if you say the 2 first, 2 is less than, because I hit the pointy end first, 2 is less than 8. Now I'll go ahead and put my 2 and my 8 back. Now reading this one again from left to right, saying the 2 first, 2, and I hit the pointy end first, so I would say is less than 8. Now if I read this statement from right to left, I say the 8 first, go left, and I hit the wide end of the symbol first, so I say is greater than 2. All right, now here's the real test. I'm going to throw in some letters instead of numbers, so you don't get any clues from the sizes of the numbers, from the size of the numbers. And just pretend that A represents some number and B represents some different number. And I want us to read this expression from left to right and then from right to left. All right, so you would say A is greater than B. Or, reading it from right to left, you would say B first, drag your finger to the left, you hit the pointy end, so you would say less than A. Now let's say down here I have some number I'm representing with an X and a different number I'm representing with a Y. So reading from left to right first, you would say X is less than, because I hit the pointy end first, Y. Or reading from right to left, you could say Y is greater than X. Okay, so I hope that helps with being able to flexibly think about and read expressions that use these greater than and less than symbols. If you feel like you need some practice exercises with these symbols, I'm going to have you work in the Stekvan Pre-Algebra Math book on page 14. So if you need to borrow this book from me or if you need to borrow this book from me, let me know, and then you can do this practice set on page 14.